Hey everybody. I'm going to do something a little bit different this Sunday. I have a book I want to read to you. This is the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. I really like this book because it has beautiful pictures and I think that you'll like the story in it too. Okay, so let's get started. Joseph and his coat of many colors. This is an adapted version by Tess Fries, and it's illustrated by Cheryl Mendenhall. All right. Once there was an old man named Jacob who had 12 sons. All of his sons he loved, but he loved Joseph most of all. Jacob gave Joseph a special coat of bright and beautiful colors. Here's his coat. Joseph's brothers were very jealous, for they knew Joseph was their father's favorite son. So here we have Joseph in his coat of many colors. Now, throughout this book, I want us to go and think about some of God's commandments. Now, there's a section of the Bible that talks about God's 10 commandments, okay? Now, I have a way for you to remember the 10 commandments, okay? All right, so the first God is that I am the Lord your God, and you'll have no other gods before me. That's what God said. So that's one. He's the one God. We have no other gods before him. Okay? 2. So, second one is don't bow down to false idols. Don't make false idols. You can imagine this little person's bowing down to somebody that's not God or something that's not God. All right? 3 is do not take the Lord's name in vain. So we have 3. Now, also, this kind of involves our words. So I have like a W here so we can remember our words and what we say. So make sure that we have wholesome speech, good things that we say, and we only say God's name when we're using it to talk about him or to him. Okay? The 4th one is you take 2 fingers and then you make like a little church. So like last week we did the little steeple thing. This is another steeple for the church, okay? And it is remember the Sabbath day and keep it and make it holy. And so a lot of times, we attend church on Sundays. The 5th one is honor your father and your mother. And so honor means not only obey, but you need to be respectful of your father and your mother. But it says that if you're respectful and you honor your father and mother, then you can live a good life, a happy life, and a long life. Now, it's that's something that God says could happen. So, honor your father and mother, and you can have an awesome life. We like to think of a high five there. Okay? Now, the next one, 6, is do not kill, and this one's kind of a goofy one. Okay, do not kill. So have a little person here and go, ah! So that one's kind of a silly one. Ellie likes that one. Okay, number 7 is to be faithful. So we can imagine here's a mommy and a daddy, and here's all their kids. And so you want to keep mom and dad together, and they'll be faithful to each other. And if you separate them, then you're breaking one of God's promises. And so that's one of his commandments there. Okay, number 8. All right. Here's something you might not have known. Way back a long time ago, if you stole something, they might cut off a thief's thumbs. So the 8th commandment is do not steal. So that's kind of scary back then. If you stole something, you might lose one of your thumbs. So there's 8. All right, 9 is do not bear false witness. And that's the long way of saying do not lie. So if you think about when somebody's standing in front of a judge, they put their hand on the Bible and then they lift their other hand up and they promise that I will tell the truth. So do not lie. Number 9. And the last one, 10, is do not covet. And that means when you want something that is somebody else's. And so you might kind of imagine somebody like grabbing, like, I want that. Give that to me. That's mine. Or I want what you have. So 10, do not covet. Okay, so as we go through this story, I want us to think about those commandments and what might be some commandments that they're breaking or what are they following. Okay? All right. So here we have Joseph, and he's very He has a coat. He's just the favorite child, and his brothers are very jealous. So you know what I think? I think that his brothers are coveting. They want that coat. They want their dad's attention. They want things from Joseph that Joseph has. We know that they're already coveting. Wonder what's going to happen next. All right. Joseph had 2 dreams that angered his 11 brothers. In one dream, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down to Joseph. In another, the 11 sheaves of grain gathered by his brothers all bowed down to his own sheaf. Okay, here we have, it's like a little cluster of grain. Well, it's actually a big cluster of grain. And he's dreamed that he is the cluster of grain, and all these other ones, all his brothers' grain, bowed before him. The brothers thought, how could Joseph think that they would ever bow down to him? Now, the one with the moon and the stars and the sun bowing down, that would be like his mother and his father and his brothers bowing down to him. So, in the Bible version of this story, we can tell that his father Jacob was a little irritated with Joseph, and he's like, you think that we'll bow down to you, even us? So I think that the way that Joseph told this story might have been kind of bragging, like, you know, oh, I had this dream God gave me that you're all going to bow down to me. And that makes me think that maybe Joseph was not honoring his father and mother. Remember the 5th one? Honor your father and mother. He seems like he's kind of bragging and not honoring his family. All right. One day, Jacob asked Joseph to go and check on his brothers, who were many miles away taking care of their sheep and cattle. When Joseph's brothers saw him coming, they decided that they wanted to get rid of him so that he would never rule over them. Reuben, the oldest brother, didn't really want to hurt Joseph. He told his brothers to throw Joseph into a pit so he could rescue him later. Joseph's brothers tore off his colorful coat and threw him into a deep, dark pit. Joseph begged his brothers to let him out, and he was so afraid. All right, so here, his brothers were thinking about killing Joseph. They didn't like him. They did not like him so much. They hated him so much that they wanted to kill him. But the oldest brother decided they would try to do something else. A short time later, while Reuben was gone, some traveling merchants came by, and the brothers got an idea. The brothers pulled Joseph from the pit and sold him to the merchants for 20 pieces of silver. When they got home, they showed their father Joseph's coat and told him that wild animals had killed Joseph. Jacob cried because he thought Joseph was dead. Okay, here's another thing that they did. They lied to their father. They told him that Joseph was dead. So they have been jealous and they coveted. They thought about murdering Joseph, and now they've lied to their father. So they're not honoring their father, and they're lying too. I wonder what's going to happen. Now, another question that I'm thinking about is, why would God let this happen? If he gives Joseph dreams and he loves Joseph, why would he let all these bad things happen to him? I wonder, you kind of wonder, like, did God forget about Joseph? The merchants took Joseph to Egypt. He looked at the towering pyramids and the great Nile River and wondered what would happen to him. Maybe he worried that God had forgotten about him. But God was always with Joseph. Let's see, over here is Joseph is here. I love these pictures in here. Joseph was sold to a rich man named Potiphar. Potiphar liked Joseph because he was a hard worker. Joseph was cheerful and always told the truth. Okay, now Joseph is learning. He's being happy and he's telling the truth. One day, Potiphar had Joseph thrown into prison. Potiphar thought Joseph had done something terrible, but he was innocent. It means he didn't do anything bad, but he thought he did. So here, Joseph is going into prison, and he didn't even do anything bad. still wondering, what is God's plan for Joseph? Joseph probably felt all alone in prison, but God was with him. You ever feel alone? Maybe right now, because we don't get to see all of our friends home. The butler and the baker for the Pharaoh of Egypt, Pharaoh's like a king, were in prison along with Joseph. One night, they each had a scary dream. God helped Joseph tell them what their dreams meant. Now, this book doesn't talk about it, but we know that the butler had the dream and Joseph told him that it meant that he would get to go work for the king again. The baker had a dream, and that meant that he was not going to work for the king again, that he was going to die. Soon, the butler went back to work for the Pharaoh, just like Joseph's dream. 2 long years later, the Pharaoh had a dream, a strange dream. The butler remembered Joseph and thought he could help the Pharaoh understand his dream. So he told Pharaoh to send for Joseph. God helped Joseph explain the Pharaoh's dream. Joseph said, God is showing you what he is going to do. For 7 years, there will be plenty of food for everyone. After that, there will be 7 years with so little food that many people will starve. Joseph also told the Pharaoh how to save food now so that there would be enough later. Okay, so all of this time that Joseph has all these bad things happen to him, it got him in a place where he could help a lot of people. Now let's see what happens with Joseph's brothers. The Pharaoh knew God had made Joseph wise, so he made Joseph second in command over all of Egypt. When Joseph rode through the streets, all the people bowed before him. Kind of like his dream, huh? Joseph forgave his brothers for what they had done and invited his family to come live with him. That's pretty great that he forgave his brothers. Now, in the Bible, it talks about how they were very sorry for what they have done. They felt bad, and they were even afraid of Joseph because they thought that he might kill them for what they did. But he didn't. He forgave them. He forgave them for all their bad things that they did. God did not forget Joseph when he was scared and alone. He gave him courage and comfort and wisdom. God knows everything that happens to you, and he will not forget you either. I think that's really helpful right now when we have to stay at home and we're all thinking about the virus. It's nice to know that God's thinking about us, even though there's some things that are happening that might be kind of scary. And even though we might be stuck at home for a while and we can't go to school and we can't go to our friend's house, it's nice to know that God has a plan for us and he has something good that he's working out through this. There's one verse that I want to read in the Bible that I really love, and it's at the end of Joseph's story. If you look in Genesis, that's the first book in the Bible, chapter 50, verse 20. Joseph is talking to his brothers, and he's telling them, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So God meant it for good that Joseph would go to Egypt and would go to prison and then end up in Pharaoh's house working for Pharaoh because it saved a lot of people from starving. Now, we talked about the 10 Commandments and how there's lots of, these 10 rules to follow, okay? Can we keep them all? Can we follow them all? No. And Jesus even talks about how the one where you kill people, you don't kill people, okay? You might think, I've never killed anybody, but if you ever really, really not liked somebody, God says that you killed them in your heart if you really didn't like them. So we've all broken some of the 10 Commandments before. But Jesus, even though he died on the cross and then he rose again, he covered all of our sin with his blood, with his sacrifice for us. So that's pretty awesome, isn't it? The people that killed Jesus, they meant it for evil, but God meant it for good to save all of us. That's pretty good news, huh? Okay. Well, I love you. I hope you enjoyed your story, and I will talk to you next week.